By the age of 70, the average American has quietly lost close to a third of the muscle they carried at 30. And most people never notice it happening until the afternoon. They can't push up off the floor without grabbing the couch, or the day the stairs start feeling like a decision. Here's the part almost nobody tells you. The first fix isn't the gym, it's the plate. There are a handful of ordinary grocery store foods that quietly decide, more than almost anything else you do, whether you stay strong enough to live in your own home, keep driving, and keep up with your grandkids. I'm Dr. Alex. I've spent years in emergency medicine, and I'll tell you what I actually see. I don't usually meet people on their best day. I meet them after the fall, after the stroke, after the heart scare. And over, the people who bounce back, the ones who go home instead of to a rehab facility, share something in common long before that day arrives. They kept their muscle, their blood vessels, and their brain fed. So, this isn't a video about eating perfectly. It's about a short list of foods that protect the 3 things that keep you independent. And I'm going to give you one specific number to hit at breakfast tomorrow that does more than any supplement on the shelf. Let me group these by what they actually protect, because a random list of healthy foods is easy to forget. 3 jobs: keep your muscle, open your blood vessels, guard your brain. Start with muscle, because muscle is independence. It's not about looking a certain way at this age. Muscle is what lets you catch yourself when you stumble instead of hitting the ground. And the enemy has a name: sarcopenia, the slow loss of muscle that speeds up after 60. The single most powerful lever against it is protein. And here is the fact that changes everything. The old recommendation, about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, was set to keep a young adult from getting sick. For an older adult trying to hold on to muscle, the research now points closer to 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram, meaningfully more. Most people over 60 eat far less than that, and they lose ground every year without knowing why. Let me make this real with someone I treated. A woman I'll call Dorothy, 74, came through the ER after a fall. No broken bones, but she'd gone down simply because her legs gave out, reaching for a cabinet. What struck me wasn't the fall. It was her diet history. Coffee and toast for breakfast, a small sandwich for lunch, a proper dinner. On paper, she ate fine. In reality, she was starving her muscles 2 meals out of 3 for years. That's not an unusual story. That's the most common story I see behind a preventable fall, and the fix started at her breakfast table, not in a hospital. So let me give you the muscle foods, and they're humble. First, cottage cheese, which fell out of fashion decades ago and is quietly one of the best protein sources in the dairy case. Most of its calories come from protein, and it's rich in a slow-digesting protein called casein that feeds your muscles gradually, which makes it a genuinely good food to have in the evening before a long night's fast. A single cup can carry 25 grams of protein. One caution when you buy it, and this surprises people, a lot of American brands pad their cottage cheese with gums, thickeners, and additives you don't need. Turn the tub around and look for the shortest ingredient list you can find, ideally just milk, cream, and cultures. The cleaner the food, the more it does for you. Second, eggs. And I need you to hear this clearly, because a whole generation was taught to fear them. For decades, people were told the cholesterol in eggs would clog their arteries. That advice has been walked back. An egg is close to a complete food, protein plus choline, which your brain actually uses to build the chemical of memory. Eat the whole egg. The yolk isn't the enemy. It's the most nutritious part. And the fake egg white products that got sold as heart healthy were never the upgrade they claimed to be. And here's a myth I still get asked about in the ER, usually by someone half afraid of their own breakfast. Doctor, don't eggs raise my cholesterol? For most people, the cholesterol in food moves blood cholesterol far less than we once believed. And it isn't the egg your heart worries about. It's what usually rides alongside it: the processed sausage, the fried hash, the buttery pile of refined toast. An egg on its own is one of the most nutrient-dense, protein-dense foods you can buy. If you want the best of them, look for pasture-raised, where the hen actually walked outside. You can often see it in a deeper, richer yolk. Third, fish, especially salmon, mackerel, sardines, and trout. Top-tier protein, plus something your brain and heart both need that we'll come back to. When you can, choose wild-caught and lean toward the smaller, lower mercury fish like salmon and sardines, rather than the big predators like swordfish. And don't overthink it. A can of salmon costs a few dollars and does the job as well as any fillet. Now here's the number I promised, and it's the share this moment of this whole video. Your muscles don't just care how much protein you eat in a day. They care how it's spread out. To actually trigger muscle building, a meal needs to cross a threshold. And for an older adult, that's roughly 25 to 30 grams of protein in one sitting. And this is where almost everyone goes wrong. Americans backload their protein. Toast or cereal for breakfast, maybe a light lunch, then a big pile of it at dinner. But your body can only put so much to work at once, and the protein you skipped at breakfast is muscle you don't get to build. So the single most useful change most people over 60 can make is this: get 30 grams of protein at breakfast. 3 eggs and a scoop of cottage cheese does it. That one shift, spreading protein evenly across 3 meals instead of dumping it at night, has been shown to help older adults hold on to muscle better than eating the exact same total all at once. Do that tomorrow morning, and you've already done the most important thing in this video. I know the pushback because I hear it. Doctor, that sounds like a lot of fussing over food. It isn't fussing. It's the difference between a 78-year-old who carries her own groceries and one who can't. Muscle is the retirement account nobody tells you to fund, and every high-protein breakfast is a small deposit. Now let's open the blood vessels, because strong muscle doesn't help if the pipes feeding it are stiff and narrow. 3 foods here, and each one works through a real mechanism, not magic. First, beets. Beets are loaded with natural nitrates, and when you eat them, your body converts those nitrates into nitric oxide, a molecule that relaxes and widens your arteries. Wider arteries mean lower pressure and easier blood flow. This isn't folklore. Pooled analyses of clinical trials show that regular beetroot, often as juice, can lower systolic blood pressure by a few points. And when your top number is running high, a few points off the top, sustained, genuinely lowers stroke risk. And this matters more as you age, because your body's own production of nitric oxide naturally falls over the decades, which is part of why arteries stiffen. Eating nitrate-rich vegetables helps top up the supply from the outside. One important distinction, though, so nobody gets the wrong idea: the nitrates in fresh vegetables are the good kind. That's completely different from the synthetic nitrates added to processed and smoked meats, which are a different story altogether. Fresh beets, good. Cured deli meat, not the same thing. And one caution people panic about, one I want to spare you the scare I've seen in the ER over: beets can turn your urine and stool pink or red. That's harmless coloring, not blood. Don't let it frighten you the way it's frightened plenty of people into an unnecessary emergency visit. Second, avocados. People think of avocado as healthy fat, and it is. The kind of fat that calms inflammation and nudges up your good HDL cholesterol. But the underrated part is the minerals. One avocado is loaded with potassium and magnesium, and here's the piece most people miss about blood pressure. It's not just about cutting salt. It's about the balance between sodium and potassium. Potassium tells your kidneys to release sodium and relaxes the vessel walls. Most Americans eat far too much sodium and nowhere near enough potassium, and fixing that ratio by adding potassium-rich foods can matter as much as putting down the salt shaker. Avocado, beets, and a good leafy green are 3 easy ways to tilt that balance back. Third, extra virgin olive oil, and the word extra virgin matters. It's the signature fat of the Mediterranean way of eating, and its power is in compounds called polyphenols. One of them, oleocanthal, is remarkable. It acts on the same inflammation pathway as ibuprofen, gently, which is part of why a genuine, peppery extra virgin olive oil is more than just cooking fat. Here's your buyer's guide, because this is one of the most faked foods in the store. Look for extra virgin, cold pressed, in a dark bottle, from a source you trust, and when you taste it, a real one has a slight peppery bite at the back of your throat. That peppery catch is the polyphenols talking. The cheap stuff cut with refined oil won't have it. That's the vessels. Now the third job, guarding the brain, the thing my patients fear losing most of all. Come back to fish for a moment, because those fish carry omega, 3 fats, and one in particular, DHA, is a building block your brain is literally made of. Your brain is nearly 60% fat, and it uses these fats to keep its cells flexible and its signals clean. Populations that eat fish a couple of times a week tend to show slower memory decline, which is why I tell patients that a simple salmon dinner twice a week is one of the easiest brain investments there is. If you don't love fish, canned salmon and sardines count fully. They're cheap, shelf-stable, and every bit as rich in omega, 3S. Then blueberries, and I don't say this lightly, they may be the closest thing to a daily brain food in the produce aisle. Their deep color comes from flavonoids called anthocyanins, and large studies following people over many years have linked higher flavonoid intake to a lower risk of memory decline and dementia. A cup of blueberries carries a striking load of antioxidants, the compounds that mop up the cellular wear and tear your body generates just by being alive. Fresh, frozen, it doesn't matter. Frozen wild blueberries are often just as good and cheaper, and freezing doesn't destroy the good stuff. Pair them with a plain, full-fat Greek yogurt, not the sweetened kind, and you've built a breakfast that hits protein and brain protection in one bowl. And if you've got grandkids, blueberries are sweet enough that kids will actually eat them, which plants a good habit early. One more that pulls double duty, broccoli. It's high in fiber, rich in vitamin C, and carries a well-studied compound called sulforaphane. And fiber deserves a moment of its own, because here's a gap almost nobody talks about. The target for adults is somewhere around 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day, and the average American eats about half that, closer to 15. Fiber feeds the good bacteria in your gut, steadies your blood sugar so it doesn't spike and crash, and helps carry cholesterol out of the body. Broccoli, roasted with a little olive oil, is one of the simplest ways to close that gap, and don't let anyone tell you frozen doesn't count. It does. There's a thread running through every food I've named, and it's worth saying out loud, because it ties the whole list together. That thread is inflammation. Low-grade, slow-burning inflammation is a common driver behind heart disease, stiff arteries, diabetes, and even the cognitive decline we worry about. And nearly every food on this plate, the omega, 3S in fish, the polyphenols in olive oil, the anthocyanins in blueberries, the fiber in broccoli, works in part by calming that fire down. So, you're not managing 5 separate problems with 5 separate foods. You're turning down one underlying process, again and again, with what's on your fork. Let me also head off the objection I hear most, that eating this way is expensive or fancy. It doesn't have to be. Eggs, canned salmon, frozen broccoli, frozen wild blueberries, a good bottle of olive oil that lasts for months, and cottage cheese are among the cheapest real foods in the store. Frozen counts. Canned counts. This isn't a boutique diet. It's a grocery list your grandmother would recognize. Let me stitch this into something you can actually do, because a list is useless if it stays a list. Picture a plate. A palm-sized portion of protein at every meal, not just dinner, cottage cheese and eggs at breakfast, fish or another protein later, a generous helping of vegetables that open the vessels and feed the gut, beets, broccoli, leafy greens. A real fat for flavor and inflammation, avocado or a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil, and blueberries as your daily brain habit. Nothing on that plate is exotic. Nothing requires a specialty store. This is the point I most want to land. Real food, in its simplest form, does the heavy lifting. The more a food has been processed, boxed, and stripped, the more of its value has usually been engineered out. And one thing that multiplies everything on this plate: a short walk after your meals. You don't need a step goal or a treadmill. A 10 to 15-minute walk after eating helps your muscles pull sugar out of your blood, which steadies your blood sugar and helps your body actually use the protein you just ate to rebuild muscle. Food builds the raw material, movement tells your body to put it to work. The two together are far stronger than either alone. Now, I want to be honest and keep you grounded, because I don't traffic in miracle claims. No single food cures anything. Blueberries won't undo a pack-a-day habit, and olive oil won't outrun a diet built on ultra-processed food. What these foods do is tilt the odds, meal after meal, year after year, in the direction of staying strong, staying sharp, and staying home. And you don't need to overhaul your life this week. You need the next useful step. So here's a simple way to know it's working, and to catch trouble early. 2 things you can track at home. First, muscle. Try standing up from a chair 5 times without using your hands, and notice how it feels. That's a rough gauge of leg strength, and if it's getting harder over months, that's your signal to push protein and movement. Second, if your blood pressure runs high, get a home cuff and check it a few mornings in a row, because the current guideline from the American Heart Association calls anything at or above 130/80 high, and these foods are part of how you bring it down. If your numbers stay high despite doing the right things, that's a conversation with your primary care doctor, not something to ignore or to panic over. Let me leave you with the one pattern to carry, because if you forget the whole list, keep this. 3 jobs, 1 plate. Feed the muscle so you can catch yourself. Open the vessels so the pressure comes down. Guard the brain so the memories stay. And if you do exactly one thing after this video, make it breakfast. 30 grams of protein in the morning instead of toast and coffee. That single habit protects the muscle that keeps you independent, and it's the easiest win on this whole list. If you've got a parent or a spouse who's been living on cereal for breakfast and worrying about getting frail, share this with them and start with 1 high-protein morning together tomorrow. Staying strong enough to live in your own home isn't decided in a hospital. It's decided quietly 3 times a day on your plate.